How's your day been so far?
It's been good. It's been good. I don't have snow yet, the way you guys have it, but apparently we're supposed to get some snow tomorrow, which is not something I'm looking
Boy.
forward to.
Nope, nope. And sorry, remind me again where exactly you are currently in?
Montreal.
Montreal. Oh, wow. Okay. And so has it been getting warmer?
It's very volatile. It's very volatile.
So it's just a Canada-wide thing then, I guess.
That's it. It gets cold, it gets
Yeah,
warm.
that's fair. That's fair. So I really am so happy that we're doing this because we've been talking about having this for quite some time, and I just had such an amazing time connecting with you. Would you like to share a bit about your kind of journey and kind of what brought you to the work that you're doing today?
Yes, I do a lot of things. That's a great question. I am a self-published author, speaker, blogger, YouTuber, mentor, a big advocate of women's empowerment. And in my free time, I really dedicate a lot of it towards women's empowerment. I am currently part of two organizations. The first one is called Women in Leadership, and the second one is called Femme Influence. And our job is really to empower the women in the community and the women that we serve. As I said, I'm also a self-published author where I did the first book that I self-published, which is called Discovering Your Identity, a Rebirth from Interracial Struggle. I speak about my experience being a third culture kid. So what it was for me to be born in Italy, grow up in Italy from South Asian parents. And I speak a little bit about the struggle between the two cultures and how I felt like I was misplaced, not feeling like I belong.
Right.
That has been a big part of my journey, and I think that has really shaped me to finally also understand myself after I've moved to Canada. So that those are some of the things that I do.
And so would you say that storytelling is a big part of the work that you do?
Yeah, I go to a lot of podcasts. People are always interested in learning about my story, being a third culture kid, to how it is for me to be Bengali and Italian at the same time. So I would say yes.
So I actually learned of that term from you, third cultural kid. I never knew of that term and it's resonated with me because I'm Canadian Pakistani. No, where do you feel at the moment with that identity of being a third cultural kid? Do you still feel weight or a misplacement?
No, I don't feel that anymore. I think I've done work with myself to come up with the conclusion that I am Italian Bengali. Whereas if you asked me the same question a couple of years ago, I would have struggled to tell you an answer. Like I would have not been able to tell if I was Bengali or if I was. But I remember when I moved to Canada and people would ask me, "Oh, where are you from?" I always struggled with an answer. I felt like if I said I'm Italian, it was not a good answer because people will look at me and be like, "Okay, but you don't look Italian." And if I would say I'm Bengali, people would still question it, like, okay, but you have an accent when you speak in English. And so many years ago, yes, I would have probably struggled and I would have told you that I feel like I'm not fitting in, I feel misplaced. But right now, I think I accept myself the way I am and I embrace two cultures, which is why I always say I am Italian Bengali rather than saying I'm Italian or just Bengali. I say that very firmly.
That's so profound because I'm from Sri Lanka and I'm still learning to be as confident as you are right now, but I'm also recognizing that it's not an easy journey getting to that level of confidence with your identity in a world or in Canada, especially where there's so much of multiculturalism, but at the same time, there's also so much of misunderstandings and also questions that people want to ask you about your identity that sometimes you haven't answered yourself. I definitely understand where you're coming from. I really wanted to ask you, are there kind of any stories or moments from your upbringing that's influenced you, but also influenced how you view yourself right now?
I would say there's so many episodes in my life that led me to this conclusion because I grew up my whole life in Italy and I went to a school that was predominantly Italian. All of my friends were Italian and I always was aware that I did not look like them. Even when I went to my primary school, there was like crucifix in the class. I would see nuns. I would see there was a church inside my school and I was always questioning. It started from that and I have this vivid memory of me going to school and seeing the church and people praying thing. And I was like, I don't understand, especially because I don't belong to the same religion. I would see my Italian friends, it was so much easier for them to hang out with people, going out, going to the cinemas, seeing friends and seeing boyfriends or girlfriends. Whereas for me, there was always this concern, oh, what would people say? You be careful about what you do and the perception that people might have about you. I'm just going to stay home and not bother. And I was a very obedient daughter. Like I would never go against what my parents would say. I was always very concerned about reputation. I feel like in South Asian cultures, you have to do good because anything bad that you do is reflected on us and it's gonna show that we're not raising a good daughter. So I had so much weight on me. Okay, but when I think about it now, I'm like, I wasn't going to do anything wrong if I was doing any of these things. And I feel like my teenagehood could have been different if I did not have that many, restrictions about, being worried about reputation, being worried about what people say. Like I wish I had a bit more freedom in my teenage life, a bit like my Italian friends had. And so that's something that I always like think about all the time.
As a South Asian, family comes first,
Yeah.
which is something that is not always something that's practiced here. So you're always thinking about what's people going to think about my behavior and how is it going to affect my family, or how are my parents going to think about what I did. And so you want to be conservative, you want to dress appropriately, you want to go out appropriately and hang out with the appropriate friends. And I just completely understand like where you're coming from with that freedom and not having that in your youth. But that's such an interesting perspective that you bring. What do you think during that time has given you strength in what you do today? You talk about almost restrictions, but also how is your Italian culture and Bengali culture kind of now influence the work that you do?
Here's the thing, when I was growing up in Italy, there were not that many Bengali girls, or that I was like, okay, I can go and ask some questions and be like, give me some guidance on how to navigate this. That was a struggle for me because I feel like when I wanted to speak about things, I feel like I always had to go to my Italian friends, but I felt like I was not completely being understood because I have that Bengali aspect in me. And so it was always a struggle, and I felt like I always had to explain myself, explain everything. People would tell me, like, why are you not going like to the school trip? They would take you for 5 days in a different country. I was always told not to go for it. And I always
Right.
had to explain this to my parents are not allowing me because of, religious purposes. And like everything was always about religion for some reason. And I remember I always had to explain myself, and I was never able to go to the trips that my friends would do. And my parents were worried that something bad was going to happen. So I feel like I wish I wish I had someone that was much older than me that shared my same, cultural background, someone that I could ask for guidance. And this is why I am doing a lot of mentoring right now. I mentor women from different culture and backgrounds. I'm also targeting South Asian women because I feel like we just grew up with so many restrictions. You cannot do this, you cannot do that. Because you're a girl, you cannot do all of these things. And I feel like it's
Right.
a bit unfair, especially because I could see like families that had boys in their in their family. They were treated differently. They had so much more freedom and they could go and do things. Whereas for me, it was like, no, you can't do this because you're a girl. And so the reason why I do a lot of mentoring and I mentor a lot of South Asian women, it's because I want to talk about these things and tell them that no matter what you want to do, like, you can do it. You're not doing anything bad. It's not tainting anyone's reputation. It's not written in any religion that you cannot do a trip. So I want to break these ideas because they're not based on anything. I speak a lot about this in a lot of podcasts that I go to because I think we need to bring awareness because everyone, like even my Italian friends, they thought that the reason why I was having so many restrictions, it was because of religion, but it was because of culture and how people
Yeah.
perceive
Right.
things and how people interpret things. It's not written
Right.
anywhere.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that, and thank you for like the work that you're doing. It is a core issue with the South Asian community, especially when it comes to women. So it is absolutely much needed, and congratulations on doing that too and taking that step in making change with South Asian women. I'm curious to know, like, when did that break kind of happen for you? Like, did you have a moment where you were just kind of like, you know what, like that, there's like a fine line between the mix of religion and culture sometimes, and it can get blended quite well, especially when it comes to like societal norms. So I'm curious to know, like, Did you have like that moment in life where you were just kind of like, you know what, I'm just gonna do me. Like I feel like this is not what, culture should be or what your perception was. Like I'm just curious to know.
I would say it was more like an accumulation of different things because, like, especially after moving to Canada, like, I would speak about a lot of these things and things that would bother me to my friends. And we will always have this conversation about religion and culture and how, every single person on this earth will tell you that everything that you do is because of religion and everything that you cannot do it's because of religion. But at the end it was never religion. It was more about the culture and the societal expectation and mentality that have not evolved through time. And it was also from those conversations that I was like, okay, I think I want to change the narrative of how things are being done and what things are being taught. Like, when I go to Bangladesh, I would always see this. Like, I would see how having a daughter in your family was such a like burden. It was such a burden that we just have to find a husband for her as soon as she's like 18. Sometimes some girls would like get married off like really young, which is why we have the issue of like child marriages, unfortunately, nowadays. And every time there's a daughter born in the family, the big concern is like, okay, who's gonna take care of her when, she gets older? This is what like, it was like all these experiences, all these episodes, the accumulation of different things that I was like, okay, I want to change this because I was like, like, I don't like how it was, some of the things were done to me, and I don't like hearing these things even nowadays. Like I would hear sometimes things like, oh, we should not be giving too much education to girls because, then they want to have too much freedom, independence. But I feel like it's the first thing you want to do is teach them about independence and not having them to depend on someone. But I feel like it's just everything that you do, it's always about, you have to depend on someone. It's usually you have to depend on your male, your male like a partner, or you have to depend on your father, your brother. And all of these things, they were just like, okay, I want to change all of these things. So I started like little by little by going to podcasting, like by writing articles, having my own blog, doing all these interviews. There wasn't one like particular moment. It was just an accumulation of all of these things that brought me to like, okay, I want to change this.
That's so interesting because, as a as a male, I can attest to the fact that, and I have an elder sister. Uh, we have a 12-year gap, but I can tell you that there's definitely been a lot of differences in how we're both perceived. The conversation has been in the South Asian community. Men, you should wait till you're 30 to get married. Do not be quick to get married ASAP. Women, like when you're 18, find a husband. Why don't you have your babies? Why don't you have where's your husband? Where's your man? And so, and it's almost as someone and who's in their 30, a woman who's in their 30s who are not married is almost seen controversial. Is almost
Yes.
seen like, and they're being independent. They have their own job, they have their own place, they have so much of their own work, but still there's that one element lacking, right? The man. And it's so important that you're doing that work with women, especially from the South Asian community, from the brown community, who've been like conditioned to think that your main goal is forget about your education, forget about your independence, find a man, right?
That's
And
it.
so, yeah, so it's like so great that you're doing that work. And I just want to know through that work that you're doing, have you ever come across some stories of resilience?
You know what? I mean, I have spoken to different women, and I also have like mentored young girls, young girls meaning like, I don't know, they're in their 20s, but some of them are also like, they're just from different background, not necessarily South Asian. I've seen stories of resilience, but it was more like in relation to career. So let's say them wanting to look for a job, and I always tell them like, never give up, it takes time to look for a job. If we speak about South Asian communities, the people that I have mentored so far, they're like in a different aspect of their life. Like, let's say they're already married with kids, but I also teach them, the importance of pursuing your dreams, for instance, because because I think, again, we're always conditioned to do everything for everyone else, but we never think about ourselves, which is another, I think, bad thing. Like you always have to serve
All
someone. It's
right.
always about serving someone and never thinking about yourself because it's like seen as a negative thing. But I always tell them, like, you also want to make sure that you are nurturing yourself and that you're pursuing your passions. And I also teach them what you just told me about, that it's like, unfortunately, we're taught that as a woman, our main goal in life is to just get married, and our only achievement in life is to just get married. And it's somehow it erases everything else that you have done in your
Mm.
life if you're not married by a certain age. And this is something that it's like, okay, if it's a man, it's different. But then if it's a woman, it's like completely opposite. And you're like, you get this backlash because you're
Yeah.
not married at a certain age. You don't have kids at a certain age. What have you done in your life?
All
Even though
right.
you probably have a list of accomplishments. And this is something that I have unfortunately see it. And I feel like it's still very much ingrained in people's mindset, unfortunately. I see like, the only achievement in your life is to get married and you're not taught anything else. And I feel like it's so hard to change it. It's so hard to change it. And I think there is a TED talk from Lily Singh who says about this. She says that,
Mm.
teach your girls that, getting married is not the only life achievement, teach
Yes.
them about other things as well. I'm not saying getting married is a bad thing, but it's not
Mhm.
the only thing. And I feel like we're never rewarded enough and celebrated enough for everything that we have done. Like the fact that we have a job, the fact that we have pursued studies, the fact that we want to pursue studies, like it's never celebrated, I feel like. And it's like, shouldn't you be proud of me because I'm doing all of these things? It just sucks. And I see it. I still see it, to be honest. And I feel like I've seen it also with people like in my own family where, let's say, there is a man who's pursuing a degree and he's like doing a master's and he's like celebrated so much. But if he was a girl, it's like, no, you just have to get married. That's your time to get married. I'm like, why?
Mhm.
Why does it have to be like that?
Absolutely, yeah. I kind of remembered something you wrote in your book, and it's from chapter 5, Being a Girl. I quote, when I was a kid, my parents' friends used to ask, quote, would you have wished Urmi was a boy? And this was such a kind of interesting quote because you've been talking about the leadership journey and you mentoring so many young women from different backgrounds. Has your identity has that has that core argument like, do I wish I was a boy? How does how does that work? Does that affect the way you do your work?
You know what? So in the South Asian community, I feel like my life as a boy or as a man would have been so much easier. I'm so sure about this. My life would have been so much easier just because I've seen it how it was when I was growing up with other boys in the community, and I still see it how it is with men in the community. Like life is so much easier, honestly. There is less expectations. You're not pressured for anything. If you're a boy, like even now, for instance, like I see it, let's say in the month of Ramadan, like everyone is making like iftar all together, and it's usually women in the kitchen and men are not doing anything. I'm thinking, I wish I was a man so I would not do anything.
Yeah.
Honestly, because I'm like, me too, I don't feel like being in the kitchen the whole day and making food, like I'm also fasting and I'm also sick and tired. So, and I see men like sleeping until like iftar time, and I'm like, okay, but seriously, where is equality here, for instance? I'm pretty sure my life would have been so much easier. And that quote that I put in my book, I used to hear it when I was a kid, and I always question it because I was like, I don't know why people are asking that question. Like, I don't know why they're asking that question to my parents if they wish that I was born as a man. And now I get it why they used to ask that, because usually guys at a certain age, they can go and work and earn an income and bring money at home, whereas women typically, well, according to the South Asian culture, they cannot do that because, you're at home helping out and things like that. But all of this, it gives me a reason to, the things that I do, because I think that if we speak about equality, I can do the same thing that a man does. Honestly, I can do the same thing, if not better. So, I mean, I'm a very proud woman and everything, but I know that my life would have been so much easier if I was a boy. Like, to be honest, from a South
Mm.
Asian perspective, would have been so much easier. Less expectation, less pressure, easy life, honestly.
Wow. That is very profound. You're a very strong and an intelligent woman, and you've accomplished so much. And it's not easy having a culture that minimizes you so much that you have to kind of break free from this captivity almost. And yet you've traveled and you're in a different country and you're succeeding and you're doing excellent. So I'm curious to know, like, how did your strengths support you in a new country, and how did you navigate the workplaces that you came to?
It's an interesting question, to be honest. I'm a big advocate of mentoring, and I feel like every time I needed something or I needed help, I was always looking for guidance and advice from people that were much more experienced. And I feel like coming to Canada, like I was lucky enough to find people similar to me with a South Asian background. That really has helped me a lot, to be honest, because in literally I did not have that kind of I don't want to say support, but I did not really have that kind of guidance that I needed from South Asian people because there were not that many. Whereas in Canada, I feel like it's a bit different where you do see a lot more diversity in everywhere you go. You get to meet people from different backgrounds, and even in workplaces, you see that diversity. So I feel like I was able to ask for help or ask for guidance because I was able to find women of color, women of South Asian background to who I could ask questions. And also I feel like having friends that are from South Asian background has also helped me because I feel like as a woman of color or women from a South Asian background, we all go through unique challenges. And so having a mentor was great. I do a lot of volunteering as well for South Asian communities, and I think doing that has also helped me. And it gave me also a lot of strength, if I have to tell you the truth, because a lot of the South Asian communities or South Asian groups made of women are like these women are so ambitious and audacious, and they want to pursue their dreams. So you being with them, you feel automatically empowered, and you're like, okay, like everyone wants to do the same thing. We all have big dreams, and coming together and speaking about these things, I think it gives me so much more strength, and I can see that we have similarities. Like it makes me think that okay, I'm not abnormal to have all these big ambitions and dreams. And so for me, it has been like I get a lot of that strength from being part of different volunteering groups of South Asian women, speaking to more South Asian women, and getting a lot of mentoring from South Asian women. Like I'm a mentor myself, but I think every mentor needs a mentor. So that also has helped me to navigate all these challenges.
Wow, because I'm so glad that you said that because as part of my research for this thesis that I'm writing on immigration in Canada and for part of the work that we do here at Kahani, I've found that there's this interesting theory called social capital theory, where immigrants are much more likely to succeed in any country if they have people from their own communities within this in your country there to mentor you, networks. And if you don't have that community, if you're isolated from that community, you're less likely to succeed in a country. And it's so important that you're doing that work because yes, Canada does have a multicultural society, but we often see newcomers being isolated, even as in my journeys, I've seen in my journey, there were moments where I felt isolated, or I was not part of my own community, or I felt a distance from my culture. And that can sometimes bring you down. And so the work that you're doing is so important. And yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for that because people, new immigrants, people from different backgrounds, they need that.
Yeah, I feel like people with different backgrounds need a different kind of support. Like we don't share the same struggles. And there is a podcast also that I was invited to, and the host, she is of South Asian background as well, and she speaks about all the struggles the South Asian people go through. And I'm just like, I listen to her and I watch her stuff, and I'm like, I relate to this. This is what we need.
Right.
Like, you need to find people that are similar to you, people that belong to your tribe if you want to succeed, because then you will realize that the struggle that you go through, it's very, it's not something abnormal. It's because you're probably not talking to the right person. If I go through a certain struggle and I speak to someone who's like completely different from me in terms of like career, in terms of like, ethnical background, most likely we will not be able to, like, he or she will not be able to share with me the good solution or the good guidance. You know what I mean? So you have to find the
Right.
right
Yeah.
person.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely, because I mean, even with Kahani, that's where stories become important, right? As long as people can share and hear your stories and relate to them, see your reflection in those stories, that helps them grow, that helps them develop empathy. And as an immigrant or as a person of color, as a person who is marginalized, that's so important. And it's so great that you're doing that work. And do you kind of, if you were to kind of share one story with the world, what would that kind of be? What is the theme in your story that others can connect with?
I think my main theme of my main story, which is being a third culture kid and, navigating two different, cultures, it is about acceptance and embrace. Because I think as much as it is difficult, when you are navigating two different cultures and you always feel like you're misplaced. And I felt a lot of times that I didn't want to be associated with the Bengali culture because there was just too many restrictions. But now that I am much more, like I'm an adult right now and I think about it, I feel like I need those two cultures in me, and I embrace the good or the best of the two worlds. Because yes, it is tough, and yes, it is tough to be a South Asian woman, but it does come with good things as well. Like, it gives you the reason to change the story. It gives you the reason to be the change. And at the same time, I want to embrace those two parts, because I feel like if I'm just saying I'm Italian, I'm lying to myself and I'm lying to the people. And if I'm just saying Bengali, I'm also lying again to myself and to the people. Bengali culture can be very restrictive, but there are beautiful things that comes with it. Like, when you have two different cultures, you can speak two different languages. You can cook two different cuisines. You can wear two different kinds of clothes. You have the typical, Western type of, outfits, and then you have the South Asian one with our traditional Desi clothes. Like, it's just about choosing the good parts of it and just embracing that and accepting yourself. I think that's the most important thing. I don't think we should neglect any of our parts. I think that having two cultures is really like an asset because of all these different things that come with it.
No, sorry, you go ahead.
That was just so beautifully put, because sometimes I know for myself, like I feel like I have to kind of like choose, what am I? What is my identity? Am I Pakistani? Am I Canadian? So you put it so beautifully that it's okay to extract like what resonates with you, the good of both cultures, because that's really who you are. You were brought up in Italy and you're Bengali, and that's okay. Like, that's okay to have the Italian culture and being Bengali. So I think that's really important words of wisdom to share. And that's actually, you answered the question that I actually had, was like, what would you say to someone that is struggling with the cultural identity? So you have kind of answered that, but is there anything that you would say more to that part?
I think for someone who's struggling with cultural identity, it's about, there's so many things that you can do. But I would say, first of all, to have open dialogues about it and how you truly feel, to find the right people to speak about it. Like, speak to people that have different cultures, and probably you will be able to they will be able to relate with you. I would say finding the right communities, like finding more third culture kids, or maybe finding people with like having multiple cultures in them. I think it's very important. And I would say also, like, writing about it, journaling, like thinking about more about, like, reflecting more about it and writing it. And I think, with time, you'll be able to find the answer, but it's not an immediate, it doesn't come overnight. And I think also getting cues from the things that you do, because the way I understood myself, it really happened from, the fact that I speak two languages at home. I speak both Italian and Bengali, but I never thought about it. I speak both of them. I cook both Italian and Bengali food, like, even that, like, I never gave it too much attention, but then I was like, I cook both things, even when I'm speaking, sometimes I'm using my hands and I'm gesturing, even that is part of like the Italian side, there are these little cues that helped me to come up with an answer, because now when I reflect on them, I'm like, I was already embracing both of them, but I was never paying too much attention on this. So I think pay attention to your little cues, and I think you'll be able to find an answer.
One last question from me, at least. Is multiculturalism important?
Yes, yes. I would say it's probably the main thing. It's the main thing of my story, because I feel like, even because before moving to Canada was just Italian and Bengali, but now that I live in Canada, I feel like there is a third aspect to it, which is the Canadian culture. Like, I never tell people I am Canadian, because I'm not able to relate to that yet. Like, even though I am Canadian by law, like I do have the Canadian citizenship, but I feel like, it's a continuous evolution, and I would say that multiculturalism is a big, big part of me. It's part of my story, especially because I feel like there is a new chapter, which is the Canada, basically, and that gave me a completely different perspective about.
What would be the wisdom that you wish that society knew? What do you wish that society knew about that?
People did not assume. I think we always come with biases and prejudgments, which I get it, because we all have biases, but like, don't assume. Like, I don't like when people assume things. I think it's more welcoming. I would say people ask like intelligent questions, because sometimes you have people asking some random questions out of nowhere, especially because you're in 20, like we're in 2025, and you hear any kinds of question, but also to educate a lot about diversity, because I think still nowadays people are just assuming things, and I think educating yourself is probably one of the most important thing. And I do hear comments here and there sometimes, and I don't like them, and it just shows that people are not aware about things, and aware enough of diversity and things that happen in different parts of the world, because like even child marriages, like it still happens in Bangladesh, and people were like, oh, does it still happen? What is that? Like, is it the same as an arranged marriage? I'm like, no. you know
Absolutely. And at Kahani, we say this thing, coming to the table in earnest and reciprocity, which just means like coming to the table or approaching any conversation where two people can have opposing views. Well, come ready to share your story, but also come ready to listen, right? Because we all have, like you said, biases, and that's fine, really, because we can all have our opinions and biases, but if we're not ready to listen to other people's stories, then we're not really telling our stories well enough. And I think that's such an important perspective that you bring. Well, before we kind of wrap things up, I wanted to give you the space to talk a bit about your what's up, what's new with you, what's kind of coming up, what are you working on, what are you doing, and where can people find you and the work that you do?
Yes. So if people want to connect with me, definitely they can look me up on LinkedIn, which is Urmi Hossain. They can also search my YouTube channel, which is Urmi Hossain. If people want to read my book, it's available on Amazon, and it's called Discovering Your Identity, a Rebirth from Intuition Struggle. And I do a lot of work with Women in Leadership Canada. So if they just search Women in Leadership Canada and they look for the Victoria chapter, they will find all the work that we do for the women in the community. We talk about, public speaking, LinkedIn, anything to basically help the women excel in their corporate job. And I do a lot of mentoring. One of the organizations that I am currently a mentor is called Empower Them, which is an organization for women of color, and the majority of the women there are South Asian. So it's a nice, you feel like you're like in your comfort area, because you're like, part of other South Asian women. And then, of course, there is the work that I do with Femme Influence. So if people just like, if they search for Femme Influence, they will find out more about the work that we do in South Africa.
Thank you so much. It was an honor speaking to you today and learning more about your journey.
The work that you do is so important. It gives us a lot of confidence that there are folks like you out there doing a lot of work for diverse individuals, for people of the South Asian community, for women navigating. It's not an easy time, especially to be a woman in today's world right now. So thank you so much for the work that you're doing. You're awesome. And I hope that and we can work with you again in the future. Thank you so
Absolutely.
much.
Thank you.
No worries.